Your cat doesn't steal your bed because it's spoiled. It steals your bed because it knows something you don't. We tend to brush off moments like that as random quirks. But animals rarely waste energy on coincidence. There's a message tucked inside that warm spot they claim, even if it's easier not to think about it. And when you look closely, the truth feels both comforting and a little disarming. I'm going to show you why this habit is far more revealing than it seems. If you'd like to keep uncovering the quiet meanings behind your cat's behavior, feel free to like this video and subscribe. Chapter 1. Why your scent feels significant to your cat. Have you ever noticed how your cat seems to sink into your bed, as if it recognizes something you can't quite smell yourself? There's a quiet emotional pull in the way they settle there, almost like they're choosing the one place that feels closest to you without needing you physically in it. Your scent holds a kind of steadiness for them, a trail of familiarity that doesn't shift with your moods or your schedule, and they read it with an intensity we don't usually think about. When they knead the blankets or rub their face into the pillow, they're blending a part of themselves into that space, turning it into something shared rather than borrowed. It's their way of saying they feel safe enough to claim you as part of their little world. And once you see it that way, the bed stops being just a spot they like and becomes more of a conversation you didn't know you were having. Chapter 2. The emotional meaning behind scent seeking. Most people assume your cat curls into your bed because it's soft, but the truth is far more personal. That quiet conversation created through scent becomes even deeper when you realize how much they learn about you just by breathing you in. Your cat can sense shifts in your mood, your stress, even the faint chemical traces of a day that went differently than usual, and your bed becomes the place where all of that settles in a way they understand. When they knead into the blankets, it isn't random nostalgia. It's a memory of the warmth and safety they felt as kittens, revived by the comfort of your presence lingering in the fabric. And because they form attachments that mirror the secure bonds young children build, that spot becomes a place where their heart finally feels unguarded. So when they choose your bed, they're not just seeking rest, they're seeking you in the safest way they know. Chapter 3. The social and emotional bond driving bed stealing. And once you notice how deeply they seek you out in those quiet moments, you start to wonder what else they're trying to say by choosing that space again and again. Why does a creature known for independence decide that the closest place to your scent is the only place it can fully relax? The answer sits in the way cats build their relationships, because despite all the myths about them being solitary, they form bonds with a kind of careful devotion that takes time to earn. When your cat sleeps near you, or even in the exact spot you just left, it's displaying a kind of trust that only emerges with someone they've decided is safe enough to lean on emotionally. Your presence, even when you're not there, becomes a buffer against the small stresses they collect throughout the day. And that makes your bed feel less like furniture and more like a sanctuary they share with you. And suddenly, it makes sense why that warm spot matters so much more than any perfectly cozy bed you buy for them. Chapter 4. How attachment influences bed stealing patterns. There's a quiet kind of reassurance your cat gets from your bed, and understanding that makes their behavior feel a little less mysterious. At first, it might seem like they're simply choosing the softest place in the house, but the truth is that they're returning to a spot that reliably tells them you are still part of their world. Your scent doesn't vanish when your mood shifts or when the day feels different. And that consistency becomes a kind of emotional anchor they check in with more often than you realize. Some cats slip onto the bed throughout the day, not out of boredom, but because they're making sure their safe place still feels whole, especially when life around them feels slightly off. And during times of stress or change, that pull grows even stronger. Not because they're dependent on you, but because your bed helps them regulate the feelings they can't express in any other way. Once you see it as an attachment pattern rather than a habit, the behavior feels less like stealing and more like a small way they steady themselves in a world that can shift a little too quickly for their comfort. Chapter 5. Why cats differ in bed stealing intensity. You might notice it the moment your cat slips onto your pillow with a confidence that feels oddly personal, while someone else's cat barely brushes their owner's blankets at all. That difference isn't random, and it isn't about which cat is more affectionate. It's about the long, quiet story each one carries. Some cats are born with a natural pull toward closeness. shaped by the genetics and temperament that make them seek touch, warmth, or shared space more intensely than others. Others learn softness later in life, maybe slowly, after early experiences taught them that comfort wasn't guaranteed, and your bed became the first place that ever felt truly safe. Age, history, and personality all weave together into the way they choose to approach you, whether boldly taking the center of the mattress or gently settling at the edges, as if asking for permission. And when a rescue cat finally claims your bed with the same certainty as a cat who's always known love, it's a sign that something inside them has healed enough to trust you with their rest. Chapter 6. Why your cat is drawn to the warmth you leave behind. It often starts with the faint imprint of your body still warming the blankets, and your cat slipping into that space, as if guided by instinct more than choice. There's something tender about the way they settle there, almost like they're chasing the last trace of you before it fades into the room. Cats run a little hotter than we do, yet they conserve heat with a kind of efficiency that comes from ancestors who survived in harsh, dry landscapes where warmth wasn't always easy to find. Your bed, still holding the gentle heat of your skin, becomes a perfect oasis, warm enough to relax their muscles, soft enough to let their guard drop, and scented strongly enough to reassure them they're not alone. They can sense those shifting patterns of warmth far more clearly than we can, almost reading them like a map of where you were moments ago. And when they curl into that lingering heat, it's not just comfort they're seeking. It's the quiet closeness of slipping into a space you've just left behind. Chapter 7. Warmth, sleep cycles, and vulnerability. There's a small comfort your cat is trying to give themselves, even if they can't put it into words. When you understand how much of their day is spent drifting in and out of sleep, you start to see why they treat warmth like something precious instead of optional. A cat's deepest sleep makes them more vulnerable than they'd ever admit. And during those moments, their body temperature drops just enough for them to instinctively seek out a place that feels safe and steady. Your bed offers that mix of warmth, elevation, and softness that echoes the hidden spaces their ancestors relied on, letting them relax without constantly scanning the room. It's the kind of place where their muscles loosen, their breathing slows, and they finally allow themselves to rest without keeping one ear half alert. And once you notice how completely they let go in that space, you start to realize they're not just borrowing your bed. They're trusting you with the moments when they feel most unguarded. Chapter 8. When heat-seeking might signal a health issue. And once you notice how deeply they relax in that vulnerable state, you also start to recognize when something about their warmth-seeking feels different. There are moments when a cat's search for heat shifts from comforting to constant, and it quietly pulls at your attention in a way you can't quite explain. Most of the time it's harmless, just their natural instinct guiding them toward whatever spot feels safest. But sometimes the intensity of it carries a hint that their body is working harder than usual. A cat that suddenly clings to heat sources, curling against vents, pressing into electronics, or abandoning every other resting place, may be trying to soothe discomfort they don't know how to show you. Their need for warmth can rise when their energy dips, when their joints ache, or when something inside them feels off in a way they can't navigate alone. And if that shift comes with changes in appetite, behavior, or the way they move, it's worth letting someone take a closer look so you're not left guessing what they were trying so quietly to tell you. Chapter 9. How cats seek warmth throughout the day. There's a gentle clarity that comes when you realize you can make your cat's day a little easier just by noticing the small places they gravitate toward. If you watch them move through the house, their path becomes almost predictable, guided less by curiosity and more by the quiet pull of warmth that shapes their routine. Sunbeams on the floor turn into temporary resting spots. The soft hum of electronics becomes an invitation, and a fresh pile of laundry transforms into something that feels almost magical to them. They're not being mischievous or dramatic. They're simply following the subtle shifts in temperature that their bodies read far more sharply than we do. When you offer them warm alternatives, something that holds heat without you needing to be in the room, they often accept it with a surprising sense of gratitude, as if relieved to have a space that feels both cozy and safe. And over time, giving them those gentle options doesn't push them away from your bed. It just gives them more ways to feel comfortable in the world they share with you. Chapter 10. Debunking the dominance myth. Your cat isn't stealing your bed to dominate you, and saying they are does more harm than anyone realizes. That old idea lingers because it gives simple answers to behaviors that are actually rooted in trust, not control. When a cat chooses your pillow or curls into the center of your blankets, it isn't staking a claim over territory. It's seeking the feeling of connection that your scent and your presence quietly provide. Cats don't organize their lives around hierarchies or power. They move through relationships by choosing the beings who make them feel safest. And your bed happens to hold the emotional imprint of that choice. Once you let go of the dominance story, their behavior shifts from something to manage into something almost tender, a sign that they see you as part of their inner circle rather than someone they need to challenge. And suddenly, what once looked like a battle for space becomes a small, wordless expression of closeness that was easy to misread until now. Chapter 11. Encouraging or redirecting the behavior. It helps to remember that your cat isn't trying to be difficult when it slips onto your bed. They're trying to stay close to the one thing in the house that feels steady. If you want to encourage that closeness, the simplest way is often just letting them keep that connection, because it reinforces the bond they've already chosen with you. But if you need to redirect them, it works best when you offer something that still carries the feeling of being near you, rather than expecting them to switch to a distant space without hesitation. A blanket that smells like you, a cozy spot placed near your bed, or a gentle routine that mixes affection with predictable boundaries gives them a sense of security without making them feel pushed away. Over time, your calm consistency teaches them where they're welcome, while still honoring the trust they've placed in you. And in that balance between closeness and gentle guidance, you'll find a rhythm that feels good for both of you, without breaking the quiet bond they've worked so hard to build. By now, you can probably feel how much meaning sits inside these tiny, nighttime rituals your cat creates with you. You've already been meeting their emotional world with more understanding than you realize. And seeing it through this softer lens turns their choices from mysteries into little affirmations of connection. Noticing those signals is less about analyzing and more about letting yourself feel the bond that's already there. And that same sensitivity helps make sense of something else people often overlook. Cats who choose to sit near you instead of on you are speaking just as clearly, just in a different language. If you want to hear what they're really saying, the next video leads you gently into that insight.